We're going to record. And thank you. This is a level 2 breath class. What we're, maybe what we should call this one is Introduction to the Hydraulic System. And this is a class that is best taken if you've already done the level 1 breath class. What I'm going to do now, everybody's muted themselves. You're so great. And now I'm going to mute you all as well. And I will pin this video. How do I do that? Like this. Super. Okay. So why don't we start today? Because this is a more experimental class for me at this point in time. I'm really still trying to figure out exactly the most efficient way to teach this, especially when we don't have the ability to actually, when you can't actually palpate somebody and feel the changes in the turgor pressure in their body that are created by changing the pressure gradient with your thoracic diaphragm. And we'll go on to actually choose which parts of the thoracic diaphragm to accentuate. And that's a lot easier to do when you're live and in person, because people can actually put their hand on my neck and actually feel the pressure in my neck going up and down and how that actually drives the motion. So this is an experimental class. I think that what I want to do to start this class is today, anyway, is I want to start with a screen share. I want to do a little slideshow that I'm sure some of you have seen already, but I think it's worth taking another look at. And it will also help it'll give you some visual images to go with your diaphragm. So let me, without further ado, show you some pictures of anatomy. And at the same time, we'll go ahead and stop. Why isn't it happening? There we go. Oops. Oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not good at this. Hold on, let me start over. Start over. There we go. All right. And, okay. Sorry about that. Oh, and just gave me another idea too. And excellent. All right. Go back to my screen share. Sorry. Where are we? And where to go? Here it is. So let's play. All right, can everybody see the slideshow? Actually, I can't see anybody. Where did everybody go? I can't see you. Can I have a thumbs up? Can you see the slideshow? Yes, excellent. All right, so here is our familiar picture of the diaphragm. Remember, it is a sheet of muscle attached to the bottom of the sternum, the bottom of the rib cage, the tip of the 12th rib, the tip of the transverse process of L1, the front of the lumbar spine, to another suspension bridge over the aorta, coming down the other side of the lumbar spine, all the way to L4. Notice that these fibers, these tendons here, move into muscle fibers that come up and lasso the bottom of the gastroesophageal junction. Remember, your esophagus is the superhighway from your diaphragm to your head. It's a direct connection that allows the breath to jump to the head before it finishes filling the chest. So here we have our lower esophageal sphincter, which is the lasso that accomplishes that jump from the diaphragm to the head, the breath's great jump. And then here's our central tendon. Here's what I've been calling the caval hiatus. Oh, they just call it the caval opening, but I guess that's the same thing, the caval hiatus and the caval opening. So here it is. This is the opening for the esophagus in the central tendon. And then let's also appreciate that the vast majority of the muscle fibers in this structure are on the back half of the body. So it is crucial that we learn to activate these muscle fibers on the back half of the diaphragm. Or it's not the back half, it's the part of the diaphragm that's on the back half of the body. You need to learn to activate these fibers. And remember, we've discussed about how the breath is going to come up the spine, broaden at L1, right? And that a wave is going to be generated that will ripple around the bottom of the rib cage in the same way that a boulder that will split a wave at the edge of the ocean, and the water will ripple around that boulder, meet on the other side, and add. That adding is going to happen at the sternum, right? Those two waves are going to come around and add at the sternum. They will actually arrive at the sternum before you will feel the wave that comes straight up from the bottom of the diaphragm, straight up from the spine. You will feel the wave get to the sternum before this wave is able to get to the sternum. Because as this wave is coming up the sternum, remember, this is causing a depolarization, an action potential that is rippling upward through these fibers, right? But there's also a wave going this way, causing a new action potential as it moves around. And that new action potential initiates a wave of contraction from wherever it is. So waves of contraction happen in a radial fashion around the diaphragm as this wave moves around the bottom edge of the rib cage. And this is going to make it here, because remember, this is all contractile tissue. This wave is going to make it around the bottom of the rib cage before the wave that comes this way can make it from the back to the front. And that is because when it gets to the central tendon, we are no longer working with contractile tissue. And so that wave will slow down. The wave will be dampened. The central tendon will dampen the wave. It is a phase change. So it will go slower in the same way that a person running down the beach into the water will slow down when their steps hit the water. Don't try to force this wave through here. You can't force it through there. This is not contractile tissue. You cannot force it through there. You have to allow it to continue to move at the tissue's chosen speed. Meanwhile, this wave has raced past it to the sternum. And as it does, it is initiating a radial contraction from the bottom of the rib cage up to the central tendon, from the front to the back. And when that wave, you'll feel that wave come up the front of the body toward the central tendon, from the front to the back, you'll feel that wave come up and move into the central tendon from the front. The wave from the front and the wave from the back will meet each other within the central tendon, especially right here. This is the floor of the heart. So the wave right through here, the wave will you'll feel the greatest, right? Because these waves are, when they hit each other, they're going to have constructive interference. Their amplitudes will add to each other when they meet. So that happens when the waves come around the sternum and meet. You get a big bump of pressure gradient change. But then as you allow this wave to fully mature from the bottom of the diaphragm to the central tendon, from the front to the back, You allow it to fully mature through the central tendon and meet the wave from the back. You will feel a delightful opening around your heart. Why not? That is, I think, a very important part of helping your cardiac output. But I plan to have somebody else do the research on that. It's a lot of work doing research. So just wanted to remind you, because not everybody has I don't know if Gabrielle or Dakota, you've heard about this refinement on the motion of the wave passing through the thoracic diaphragm. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was up on that. And now let me continue on with my screen, my slideshow. Oops, I'm pressing the wrong button. This one? Okay, there we go. So here is another picture of the diaphragm. I know most of you have already seen these. Picture of the thoracic diaphragm, and I really like this one because it shows how most of your diaphragm is on the back of your body. That there is no diaphragm in this area here. This is a diaphragmless area on the front of your body, and on the back of the body, that same part of the diaphragm is completely full. And you can actually imagine that your liver can park under most of this diaphragm with still room for a stomach and a spleen and some other stuff, kidneys and such. So a lot of stuff can fit under this diaphragm. A lot of hearts can fit underneath this diaphragm. And so it's got a much bigger stroke volume than the heart is my point here. And I just want to give you an opportunity to appreciate that by seeing how the diaphragm goes all the way across the back. It should really point up to us the importance of using the back of the diaphragm. It's there for a reason. It's on the back of the body for a reason. And this is just a picture of another diaphragm that can be used to change the pressure gradient. Actually, really, that's multiple diaphragms, isn't it? How do I go backwards? Is there a way to go backwards? We're not going backwards. Forward. We'll go forward. Another picture of the diaphragm showing how much diaphragm is back here. A lot of diaphragm is back there. And most of you see it. Super. So we see multiple people starting waves in that diaphragm, that parachute. Multiple people generating waves. And as we saw, those waves don't get very far. Let's see what happens when only the gentleman in this picture decides to generate the wave. And I actually want you to notice both the first wave he makes, which is a single wave that goes around and meets everybody's hands, but then he makes another wave that kind of rolls around the outside of the diaphragm. And that is the same kind of way that the waves coming around the bottom of the rib cage are going to roll around the bottom of the rib cage. The only difference is, well, actually, this is a very good video. I don't know if I captured all of it because I didn't realize how important it was the first time I watched the video, what they were doing in this video. So we'll see if it's in here, but you can think of it like these kids are going to add to that wave as it comes around. So it's kind of like they are contractile tissue. Make sense? It's kind of like they are contractile tissue because as the wave comes around, they're going to add to it. Let me play it and you'll see.
Lift it, just go like this.
So
when I do that, you do that, then you do that right around. So the bubble will go like that. See, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes.
All the way around. Did you see how they added to the wave with their little flick? I'll have to redo that video because I didn't realize how important that little video was when I first made this. I just wanted it for the one wave. But now we see that there's this rolling around capacity, which is very similar to what should happen at the bottom of your ribs. And remember that the parachute is a diaphragm and it ripples in the same way that surface tension on a body of water ripples. And you don't have to perpetuate that ripple with any further activity. All you had to do was start it, and it just reverberates out. This is a picture of your pelvis, but it shows you under here, underneath the pubic symphysis and kind of inside this inner ring here, this is where your pelvic floor is. Thigh pits, diaphragm right here, diaphragm right there. So there's 3 diaphragms in the pelvis, at least 3. I'm sure that people are going to continue to find more and more diaphragms in other places, but these are the ones I know about so far. Here's a picture of the pelvic floor. In male and female, you see it's a sheet of muscle. A sheet of muscle and connective tissue with some holes in it. Really, that's what we have in our body, is a bunch of sheets of muscle and connective tissue. Most of them have holes in them. Here's a picture of the shoulder girdle. Is a very complex structure. It's like one of those like double or triple decker parachutes, right? And we have a further refinement too, don't we? We have a further refinement that I didn't address yet. Like we were saying, I'll come back to that further refinement. Let's just have you look at the rest of these pictures rather. Again, sheets of muscle attached to a frame. Sheets of muscle attached to a bony frame. This factors very prominently in what we're going to be doing today, right? What we want to try to do is start to use our muscles and tendons more like kite strings rather than like towing cables. Much less wear and tear on the body. Here is a picture of what is called a normal palate. And it may well be a normal palate, but it is not a healthy palate. This is a very congested palate. But I thought it was a good picture. Because here, this is a diaphragm back here, right? This whole thing is diaphragm. Here is another diaphragm, the floor of the mouth. Probably the most important diaphragm in the head. Oh. You know, my friend said to me when I was telling her about the floor of the mouth, she squealed because she was born in the year of the pig. She squealed and she went, "Ooh! Is that why tongues have such incredible propulsion of their tongue? Because it is seated in the floor of their diaphragm?" And yes, it is. And I'll show you more about that in a little bit. But I don't think I have that in my slideshow. I'll see. Okay, and here is another floor of the mouth. Here is our triple decker diaphragm, stack of diaphragms in the head, floor of the mouth, palate, roof of the nasal cavity. Don't know if you know about this one yet, Dakota. Roof of the nasal cavity. I like this picture better. It's interesting. All of our major sense gates involve diaphragmatic structures, right? All of them. And this is a major sense gate. This is the cribriform plate that hosts all of the olfactory apparatus. And again, more like kite strings, less like towing cables. Here are some more diaphragms, diaphragms, diaphragm, 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 okay? Diaphragm. That's the tympanic membrane there. Seat of a diaphragm, diaphragm. Diaphragms, cornea, iris, lens, eyeball itself, all diaphragms. Oh, one of my favorite diaphragms. One of my favorites. Especially for jiu-jitsu. This is one of my favorite diaphragms for jiu-jitsu. Because if you maintain this soft, even engagement over the entire body, your sensitivity will be multiplied You'll be able to feel so much more about what the other person is doing and gather so much more information over a larger space and time. Diaphragms. Oh, how cool. Let's just notice the eye socket, that's the bone there. Here are the cells, fat cells, muscle cells, optic tract here with nerve cells, and a bunch of other stuff is in there. And all of that surrounding the eyeball, this diaphragm back here. And these are the optic tracts, right? They're attached to the back of the eyeballs, right there, same tracts. If the eyeball is being pulled in and pushed out, it's going to affect this whole tract. You will feel motion along the entire track. Trampoline is a diaphragm. The arch of the foot is a diaphragm. The back of this area here, there's a diaphragm. There's a diaphragm in here in the thigh pits. Diaphragm in the axilla. Diaphragm in the antecubital fossa, the elbow crease. Diaphragm in the palm of the hand. Sheathing on a building is a diaphragm. This is actually important. This is another very important one for jiu-jitsu. Diaphragms like to integrate, and that's what gives the structure integrity. Before you put sheathing on a building, it wiggles around. Once you put that sheathing on the building becomes solid, integrated. If you engage all of your diaphragms, it integrates your body. It integrates your nervous system. It integrates your musculoskeletal system. It integrates the flow of lymphatic motion. The flow of lymphatic fluid, I mean. What else do we have? Oh, bonus. Bonus. This is inside the heart. This is what we call the fossa ovalis. Right? This is a little diaphragm here. And interestingly enough, SA node, cyanoatrial node is up here. AV node is down here. That's the electrical conduction of the heart. Goes right across this. There is a diaphragm that stabilizes every major autonomic hub. The valves are diaphragms. And, oh, there they are, the valves. And also the septum. I didn't have a picture of that, but the septum is also a diaphragm. So let me close that down now. And I want to play you a video, a couple videos. Why isn't that stopping? Let me see if I stop that. Huh. All right. Somebody tell me how I get out of the slideshow. Oh, I did it. I did it. Thank you. Sorry. Somebody tell the monkey how to do it. Hold on. Let me show you some other pictures, and then we're going to talk more specifically. Let's see the little pictures. Couple more things to show you. So, where is that one? Here we go. Are you still seeing my screen shares? You got my screen share? No, let me go back. Sorry. Okay. So let's think about this frog situation. Okay. Let's think about this frog propelling their tongue out of the center of their diaphragm.
Not bad. We got him about halfway up. Last one. Up, down. There he goes. Boom. Yeah.
Launch the chicken with the parachute. I just want you to show the kind of power that can be generated by using your diaphragm. And let me, and let me show you a couple more things. And we may return to this one. Make this big. Ready? Not going to talk about it much, but I'm going to show it to you again. Right. Oh, very important concept. Very important biomechanical concept. All right. And finally, one more thing I have for you. I don't know what I did with it. No. Ah, here it is. Where is it? I'm impatient. I'm impatient. Oh no, hold on. Sorry. I should have had this pulled up. Let me try this again. Oh, here it is. Okay. One more show and tell for right now.
Ah, the entrancing ballet of the jellyfish. So graceful, so efficient. Scientists have long known how economic jellyfish locomotion is, but a new study exposes a hidden energy-saving trick that the creatures use to get around the ocean. It looks like jellyfish are kicking to move around, but really, they and an unrelated and horrifying creature called a lamprey actually pull themselves through the water. Look at this video the researchers made. The red part on the lamprey is high pressure, normal for a critter cutting through the water, but the blue stuff, that's low pressure. It turns out that the undulations of jellyfish and lamprey bodies create low pressure vortices, like you'd find in the eye of a hurricane or tornado. That resulting low pressure sucks in water, helping propel the creatures. And the suction is so powerful that it's the dominant force in the animal's forward thrust. Let's see your Dyson do that. Because jellyfish and lampreys are so distantly related, the researchers reckon that this trick of physics may be widespread in the animal kingdom, and not just in the oceans. Birdwings may actually exploit it as well, giving the creatures an extra little kick. And the discovery could work its way into machines. If engineers can figure out how to create these pockets of low pressure on boats, the vessels could save fuel. So thank you, little jellyfish, for your beauty and efficiency. Now enough with the stinging already.
Okay. Oh, let me turn that on. Oh, it stopped by itself. Let's see. Make sure it stopped. Where'd it go? All right, I don't think anything else is going to play. I do have one more video, but we're not going to do it right now. Now I'm going to talk to you about, oh, and I had it all in front of me. Shoot. Back. May. I had it all right here and then it went away. There we go. All right. So the way we normally think about moving the body is we think that a muscle is going to contract and that's going to shorten. So if I have a muscle attached up here and I have a muscle attached down here, when I contract it, it's going to pull this bone towards the origin. There's an origin and an insertion point. And when I contract, it's going to pull the insertion toward the origin, and the muscle will get shorter and fatter. That's the way we normally think about it. So by the same logic, the way that we think about moving the neck is, it's a little more complicated than this, but the main guy is going to be this one. If I want to rotate the head that way, I'm going to take this muscle and I'm going to shorten it. And it's going to drag the back of my head. It's going to drag the back of my head closer to my sternum. Now there are some other muscles that are contracting on this side and yanking from this side. And that also means, though, that the nervous system, when I yank with this one has to get turned off. Because if this one doesn't get turned off, then they're going to fight each other. But this one gets turned off when I yank my head this way. If I want to yank my head back that way, this one turns on and this one turns off. There's some other muscles that work with that, but the main thing is one side gets inhibition and the one side gets contraction and the other side gets inhibition by this model of thinking. There is another way to move your body by making use of your hydraulic system. You too have the capacity to create a vortex in your body, just like the jellyfish. Creating a vortex is one of the many wondrous capacities of a diaphragm. It is essentially the capacity to change the pressure gradient in order to generate power, movement, work, force, right? I probably should only have used one of those terms technically, but it gives you the ability to do stuff. The place that we want to start to work with this is just using right and left and front and back, okay? So we'll start with right and left. So if I want to rotate my head this way, what I'm going to do, instead of just yanking, instead of just shortening this muscle and yanking the back of my head over this way, what I can do, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, let's try this. I can pressurize my whole body by inhaling and filling up every diaphragm with breath. Now I'm going to let the breath out on the right side, and as I do, there is a slight drawing sensation to the right, and I just let my head go with it. Even though I'm only moving my neck, I still want to empty all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis before I inhale over here to go further. When I let my head go as far as it will go on the inhalation, I inhale to drive it further with support and pressure, structure generated by pressure within the tissues. When I let that breath out, it sucks my head back to the midline. Now I'm going to keep emptying that way because that's all one breath there. Then I'll inhale over here to go further. So it's a different quality of motion. It's different from this. It feels very different. This, I feel a lot of pulling. I hear cracking. It's uncomfortable. I use pressure to move, and it's like kite strings. And we can actually apply this to anything in the body. Why don't we go ahead and try doing a couple head rotations? Actually, let's go ahead and let's remember. In fact, why don't I go, I'm going to talk us into a breath practice. Let's everybody do this in a seated position. I'm going to talk us into a breath practice, and you'll just watch the rest of the video practicing breath, and then we'll be able to, at any moment, bust out from an explanation session into a experiment with your own breath. So let's everybody do this in a comfortable upright posture. Find a place where you can feel your sit bones on the seat underneath you. And what I'd like you to do is I would like you to notice whether you're on the front of your sit bones or the back of your sit bones. One way that can help figure that out is go ahead and slouch and find yourself on the back of your sit bones when you slouch, right? On the back of my sit bones now. Jutting my head forward, shoulders forward, everything is like rolled out on the back of my sit bones. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll forward on my sit bones, and I'm going to roll into the position that I think is like sitting up straight. But only thing is, here I've got this really big curve in my low back. So I'm going from here to here so that I can tip my shoulders back. And then I got to pull my shoulders back. That's pretty uncomfortable. We want something more comfortable than that. And so what we're going to do is we're going to roll from the back of the sit bones to the front of the sit bones, and then go back to the back of the sit bones. Now as you come forward, pay attention to that place where you go, where you're in between the front, the transition point between the front of the sit bones and the back of the sit bones. When you found that spot, stop right there. Don't feel like you have to. If you find that you find the transition point and wow, your shoulders are still, your head and shoulders are still pitched forward, don't try to bring yourself upright at the expense of your lumbar spine. See if you can't gradually extend through the upper back while leaving the lower back, long so that you can still get a breath into it. Okay? So go ahead, go from the back to the front, find the transition point, and then see if you can, see how much you can make your upper back go upright without compromising your low back. If you feel like, oh, if I get to a point where I extend, and then suddenly in order to go any further, I push my low back forward, let's not do that. Let's stay where the low back is long for now. Okay, and then we'll try to use the breath to gradually extend you through the upper back. Main thing right now is find that transition point. Be as upright in your head and shoulders as you can without reverting to lordosis to make that happen. Okay? So now let's begin breathing from the bottom of the pelvis up to the top of the chest and emptying from the top of the chest down to the bottom of the pelvis. Remembering that the most important instruction when you practice breathing is to let it be as easy as possible. To let it be relaxed, to let it be something that is softly expansive. Almost as if you're not doing anything yourself, as if you are just going to allow the universe to breathe through you. Remember that the only muscle you have to use in order to get your best breath is your thoracic diaphragm. A sheet of muscle and connective tissue attached to the bottom of the sternum, the bottom of the rib cage, the tip of the 12th rib, the tip of the transverse process of L1, the front of the lumbar spine, all the way down to L4, L3. Does it go to L4? It might. Definitely does over here. And it would make sense that it would start a little lower in the part that goes around the esophagus. So, bottom of the ribs, bottom of the sternum, front of the lumbar spine, tip of the transverse process of L1. Bring your mind to the borders of the diaphragm where you know it's attached. Notice the sensations you have there as you inhale and exhale. Inhalation feels different from exhalation. The sensations of inhalation are the sensations of contraction. The sensations of exhalation are the sensations of relaxation. Use your nervous system to reach for the muscle fibers on the back of your body. Initiate your breath at L4. Let it roll up your spine. Let that impulse, that action potential broaden at L1. Feel it ripple around the borders of the diaphragm where it meets at the sternum and adds to itself constructively. Just do that for now. Feel the breath rolling around the bottom of the rib cage like a wave split by a boulder rolls around that boulder, meeting itself, embracing itself, and adding to itself constructively on the back of that boulder. Feel how this opens up space behind your sternum. When you allow these two waves to crash into each other from opposite directions. And now feel the wave moving from the back of the body to the front of the body, and notice that as it comes up from the bottom of the diaphragm, that wave is dampened by your central tendon. It slows down. Let it slow down. Don't try to push. Don't try to push it from the front of the body to the back of the body. Let it go at the tissue's chosen speed. Let the waves coming around the bottom borders of the ribs race ahead of this wave coming from the back to the front. Let this wave race around, and as it does, let it initiate a wave of contraction from the bottom of the diaphragm up to the central tendon, from the front of the body toward the back. As it moves around, feel that wave. After these two meet, feel this wave come up from the bottom of the diaphragm. You'll feel a lift right through the front of your body as it comes through. Let it move through. Let it move into the central tendon from the front to the back. Let it meet the wave from the back to the front. When they meet, they add constructively, and feel the great, extraordinary open space you create in the middle of your chest. Like you could just suddenly manifest a park, a big, open, spacious park in the middle of a cluttered city, out of nowhere, out in a business district, boom, out of nowhere. It's not even just a regular park. I mean, it's like a grand mesa or something like that, right? Let that open up in the middle of your chest as the wave from the back of the body moves to the wave of the front of the body. And just keep doing this. So now, let's go ahead and notice that almost immediately when we start to engage at L4, almost immediately, it's just a stagger step. It's just like a little half step off, half step behind it. After this wave comes, it's going to come right up here. It's going to lasso your gastroesophageal junction. It's going to pull it down. And when it pulls it down, this wave starts almost immediately. These are the first fibers to contract of the diaphragm. So almost immediately, you feel the pulling at the front of the throat and under the chin. Allow that pulling sensation to engage the lower jaw, and then all of the other diaphragms in the head. Let them move. So your head should fill with breath faster than your chest fills with breath. There are 20 diaphragms in the head, at least. There are at least 25 diaphragms in the head. Floor of the mouth, the palate. So the floor of the mouth, you feel that move, you feel the breath come to the center of the head. Roof of the mouth, or the palate, you feel the breath come up the back of the head, neck, and shoulders. Roof of the nasal cavity by the crib-reform plate, You're going to feel that get drawn down on inhalation, lift back up on inhalation. Let all three of those wave variations happen. And then see if you can let your cheeks move. Let them be drawn in by inhalation, let them puff back out by exhalation. And then think about this little flap here between your cheek, the bridge of your nose, and your nares. Let those little flaps get drawn in by inhalation, puff back out with exhalation. Now, let's do the eardrums. We're going to let them get drawn in by inhalation. We're going to let them puff back out with exhalation. And now your temples, what we call the temples. Let those move. Let them get drawn in by inhalation. Let them puff back out with exhalation. Now let's let the eyeballs move. Feel them be drawn in by inhalation. Drift back forward as you exhale. Go ahead and feel the motion that is generated along your entire respiratory tract as you inhale and exhale. Sorry, not on your respiratory tract. See if you can feel the lines of sensation from the back of your eyeballs to the back of your head. See if you can feel for the optic tract. For motion along the optic tract as you inhale and exhale. And now let's get you guys to be a little more relaxed. And the way we're going to do that is bring your fingers out to the side and wiggle them. Notice what happens to your vision when you're trying to see both fingers wiggle at the same time. Then stop wiggling and see if you can just allow your vision to rest there in a place where you're not tunneling in on any particular thing, where you're taking in everything in your periphery. And let yourself feel for the front of your eyeball, for your cornea, and let your cornea move to the best of your ability. And then let your iris move. So now we have about 20 diaphragms online inside the head. I can even think of a couple more that I haven't even really thought of before. I just thought of them right now. What is that called? The septum. I'll have to look it up and show you. Septum pellucidum, I believe it's called. So we'll go into that some other point. But I just thought of it, so I'm just going to say it out loud right now. So let all these diaphragms in your head move. And notice that they start moving almost immediately after you start to inhale. Expect them to move. You can almost be there knowing, oh, I'm about to inhale. I can tell that I'm about to fill my head up. I'm going to allow every diaphragm in my head to participate with this inhalation. And notice that the head fills long before the head becomes full and expands in all directions. long before the breath coming from the bottom of the pelvis through the chest can make it to the shoulder girdle. And because it fills up before the chest, as it becomes so full, it overflows. And that breath starts to come back down, that wave of pressure starts to come down the neck. And it will actually come down to the shoulder girdle and meet the wave coming from the bottom to the top. Those two waves will meet at the shoulder girdle and they will add to each other. And it will spread out concentrically all directions. So take a moment to feel the expansion that happens in your shoulder girdle as the wave coming down from your head meets the wave coming up from the bottom of the pelvis. And now, let's bring our mind into the abdomen. We've got the thoracic diaphragm going. We've got the diaphragms in the head going. We have those two waves meeting at the shoulder girdle, expanding the shoulder girdle in all directions. The shoulder girdle, as we saw just a couple pictures of it, is a complicated structure. It's kind of like a geodesic dome or something. There's just multiple diaphragms within that one diaphragm. And so allowing it to be filled from the bottom and the top gives us such a nice expansion of the shoulder girdle. So now our mind is in the abdomen and noticing the sensations of motion we experience as we inhale and exhale, noticing that these sensations feel very similar to the sensations of standing in the tide. When a wave comes in, it pressurizes the organs, it pushes them to the pelvic floor. They're going to get smushed outward like an exercise ball will squish if you sit on it. And when you relax that diaphragm and lift that pressure off, the organs rise up underneath it like little skydivers, and they will continue to lift up, 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 up as you empty down. So the more you relax, the more you'll feel your organs lifting up, and they'll keep lifting up until you get to the pelvic floor. And when you do, it will lift the pelvic floor for you. It will be as though you did a slight, spontaneous, effortless little kegel. Let your pelvic floor move. He's here. Let your pelvic floor move. Let it lift at the end of exhalation. Let it drop as you start to inhale. Feel now that your whole body is expanding in all directions. Every time you inhale, it's expanding in all directions. You're getting a little tiny bit bigger with every inhalation and exhalation. This, by the way, I think is one of Hanuman's cities, because Hanuman, the great monkey god guy, he had all of these great powers, and one of them was the power to grow bigger or smaller at will. And that's basically, and it's a fantastic power, even though we don't grow as tall as a building. That little bit of expansion we get out, and that little tiny bit of retraction or collapse back in is, I feel, kind of a superpower. And that is probably one of the main superpowers we're looking at in this class, because that is the power that we have to generate motion in the tissues that is far more integrated than simply yanking your muscles and bones around. Your bones around, better, I guess that's the way to say it. So, so you guys keep breathing, bottom to top, top to bottom, using 3 diaphragms in the trunk, using probably 20 or more diaphragms in the head. You're probably using some and not knowing it. And now let's start doing arm and leg breathing. Let's start breathing from the with the arms and legs. So since we're seated, if you're seated in a chair with your legs on the floor, you're going to lift your toes up. You're going to squeeze all the muscles of your lower extremities right where you are in the chair. Squeeze the muscles on the front of on the front of the lower leg, on the back of the lower leg. You're squeezing all the muscles in your foot, lifting your toes, pressing your feet into the floor. You're going to squeeze the muscles on the back of the thighs, or the back of the thighs, the front of the thighs, the outsides of the thighs, the insides of the thighs. You're going to squeeze your butt cheeks. You're going to squeeze everything a little bit. If you can find that spider web like tension, the very, very faint tension, and get that little squeeze all over the body, see how faint of a squeeze you need to generate and still be able to feel the expansion of the body all over the body. You really don't have to squeeze very hard, and it is really worth your time to become very subtle with how much force you use at any given moment. And the best way to improve your sensitivity is to do this with a really nice light squeeze on everything. Very light, like spider web. And then you can vary it. You can do some spider webs, and you can do some really big wind up, more intense things if you want. But in the end, I think probably the predominant portion of your breathing should be soft. A little bit of hard, a lot of soft. So, arm and leg breathing. Everybody should be arm and leg breathing right now. If you're seated in a chair, remember, squeeze all the muscles of your lower extremities, lift your toes. And then also do your arms. You're gonna spread your fingers in your palms. You're gonna squeeze all the muscles of your forearm, all the muscles of your upper arm. You're gonna squeeze all the muscles around your shoulders, including your latissimus. That should make your armpit do this, become deep and defined, okay? So, few more arm and leg breaths. Push this back at this point in the thing. There we go. Let's see more of me. So, arm and leg breathing. Now let's start alternating sides. We're going to do the right side, we're going to do the left side. Now notice that as you do arm and leg, as you alternate sides, what happens to your body. Notice that your body naturally shifts towards the side that is emptying. And we'll actually even just start generating some motion right here. Let's go ahead and bust into a little experiment. So, I'm going to do arm and leg breathing, but notice that we're going to pressurize both sides. We're going to empty the right side. And as we empty the right side, see if you don't feel that your body wants to drift toward the emptiness. It's going to drift toward the emptiness. When you feel that breath, and you're not trying to lean, but you're just going to let your body go with the subtle motion that you feel. The subtle forces you feel acting upon your body as you feel the subtle forces acting upon your body as you let that breath out. Whenever you generate emptiness, it's going to take it's going to draw, right? If I create emptiness, it's going to draw things into it, right? If I don't create that emptiness and I want to go there anyway, I'm going to have to smush any residual pressure that I failed to empty out. So not only will I not have emptiness on my side helping me with the motion, but I'm actually going to have to squish. I'm going to have to use the muscles on the other side of my body to squish any residual pressure that's stuck in there. That squishing is what causes a lot of pain in people, the squishing of that pressure. So let's not squish that pressure. Let's empty it all the way out. And I want you to feel this like a fluid level dropping through your body. And we're going to drop it through almost like you were a container of fluid that has a drain in the feet, right? So if I fill myself up from the bottom to the top through my foot, it will expand that side. And if I empty it, the water level will just drop down, and I will retract a little bit in all directions. So when we breathe, when we do this side-to-side breath, see if you can feel for the emptiness that you're generating with your vortex generator. Generate that emptiness, feel that draw the fluid all the way down the body, all the way down the body, all the way down through the leg and the foot on that side of the body. When you've gotten all the way empty, you're going to engage this side, fingers and toes, and engage this side and let that pressure push you just a little. We're talking millimeters of motion here. Millimeters of motion, but let that little bit of motion push you a little bit further from midline, okay? And after you're done with that inhale and you let that pressure back out, let that pressure draw, let that collapsing pressure draw your body back to the midline. When you get back to neutral, you're going to empty the other side, let the other side get drawn into the emptiness all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis when you feel that pelvic floor lift, or even if that goes all the way down through your leg, through your foot. When you get all the way there, you're going to fill up over here to go further. So you let the pressure moving through the body be what pushes you a little side to side. I've been exaggerating the motion a little bit. I'm gonna try to exaggerate a little bit right now as we do it. But I don't want to try to exaggerate too much because remember, we're trying to feel for subtle motion here. It's very, very useful. So if you haven't already, pressurize your system and begin emptying on the right. I feel the fluid level drop down through my head, neck, chest, pelvic floor in a second. Then I'm going to inhale over here. Let that pressure out. I passively move back to the midline, and now I'm going to empty top to bottom on the left. Then I'll fill on the right. Let's have you keep doing that, side to side, side to side. Do a couple more breaths like that. Good. Now let's now that we've done that, let's go to today we're going to focus on the neck. Today we're going to focus on the neck. So now we're going to look at how we can use this, take this little tiny bit of motion that's generated by this motion, by this expansive motion that we can alternate on both sides. That little tiny bit of motion generated, let's look at how we can use that to drive bigger and bigger motions. We're going to pressurize our system, breathe on both sides, use all of your diaphragms, fill yourself right up, and when you start to exhale, what we're going to do is we're going to let that fluid pressure drop down. And I really want you to imagine the shape of your body as a fluid container, and see if you can feel the edge of the water level around the inside of the fluid container. See if you can feel the borders of the water level along the front of your spine as the water level drops, or the inside of your ribs. Try to allow that sensation of the water level dropping down, the fluid level pressure level, if you will, dropping down. Try to really make that a vivid experience of the inside of your body emptying, okay? And as you do that, I want you to notice that as you empty the top, you'll feel as though your head gets drawn. You'll feel your eyeball get drawn. You'll feel this side of your face get drawn. Everything get drawn over to one side. And even though we're only trying to move the neck here, it's still important to bring the breath all the way down to the bottom of the pelvis or deeper as you exhale. It's still very important to bring the breath all the way down to the pelvis or deeper, because you'll find that if you do that, you'll keep getting just a little bit more range of healthy range of motion. You're going to get just a little more healthy range of motion as that water level drops down. And when you feel like your pelvic floor on that side of your body goes boop, lifts up a little bit, when it drops, inhale on the opposite side of your body and let that push your head further into rotation. Then you'll let that pressure out and it'll bring your head back. Let's try doing some of those now, okay? Let's do some rotation. So pressurize the whole system. Remember, go on your own breath. Do your own breath. And then just try to apply what I'm saying to wherever you are in your breath cycle. So I'm going to pressurize the right side, the whole body rather. Fluid level dropping through the head, making it easy. It's not just easy to turn my head. It actually draws my head into the rotation. Then when you're all the way to the bottom, inhale on the opposite side. Let the emptying pressure bring you back to midline, and then start the process of emptying from the top to the bottom on the other side. So exhale, 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 exhale. Bottom of the pelvis, inhale on the opposite side. Then exhale, 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 exhale. Start at the top of the head. Exhale, 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 exhale. When you hit the bottom of your pelvis, inhale on the opposite side to go further. Great. Let me see you. Let me see everybody. So is everybody feeling this? Can I have some thumbs up? If you're feeling it, yes. 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 How about you, Josh? You got this one? Excellent. Good. Let's look at side bending. Very important for jiu-jitsu. Neck exercises. Probably the most important thing. I think the most important thing to give your jiu-jitsu longevity so you can train for the rest of your life is supple motion in the neck, right? So now we're going to do side bending, and it's going to be the same kind of situation. I'm going to pressurize my whole system. And now as I empty on this side of the body, my head just kind of follows the water level. And even though I'm just bending through the neck, I'm going to let that water level travel all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis and get a little more healthy range of motion. Inhale over here. Let the breath bring us back from that end range of motion safely and passively. Let it carry us like a wave, and then empty from the top to the bottom. Now you can really feel this sensation come up all the way through your arms and legs, filling that whole side of the body, making your neck very strong in the end range of motion, much stronger than it would be if you just yanked and inhibited. We're not doing any inhibition here. We're not inhibiting anything. We're maintaining full engagement, even if it's just spider web engagement. Oh, I do love spider web engagement. Water strider engagement. Even if you're just maintaining that slight engagement all over the body, it can be more intense engagement, that's for sure, that's fine. But it's really nice to find that subtlety. That's what will really help you guide your breath practice deeper and deeper. Can we feel the pressure change moving the neck? Can I have some thumbs? Got it, got it, got it, got it. Super. You guys are great. Let's do some flexion extension. Now, instead of emptying side to side, we're going to empty front and back. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can go ahead and do that without moving at all first, just in one place. Go ahead and see if you can inhale up the front, empty down the front, and then inhale up the back and empty down the back. Okay, try that for a couple breaths. Now I'm emptying down the front of my body. Down, 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 down. When I get to the bottom of my pelvis, I'm going to inhale up the back of the body. I don't think I reminded you guys to make your suction seal. I apologize for that, but make it now. Make your suction seal. Now let's try to do some flexion extension. And I'll just go ahead and hop my little chair around here. It's not really a chair, it's a pillow, but you know what I mean? A little cushion. All right. And let's do something here. Let's go ahead and let's have the tongue flat on the roof of the mouth. And I want you to swallow and notice the pattern of contact that the tongue makes on the roof of the mouth. If it's not the pattern of contact I want to encourage you to try to allow to happen is a pattern by wherein the tip of the tongue is going to have the most pressure at first, and this is right next to itself, right? So you're not really going to make space in between the two structures, the tongue and the palate, but the wave of pressure is going to come up and touch the roof of the mouth and travel in a wave-like fashion. This is why I need an animator. I need an animator to do this for me. Travel in a wave-like fashion from the front of the palate to the back of the palate, from the tip of the tongue to the back of the tongue. So on your next swallow, when I tell you, you're going to swallow, you're going to see if you can generate that pattern of motion with the tongue. But as you do it, but we're going to do it in this setting. We're going to do it in the setting of, I'm going to empty all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis. I'm going to take a nice breath in, empty all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis. I'm going to swallow right before my pelvic floor lifts, or right about the same time. I'm going to make that wave motion, and when that wave gets to the back of the tongue or the back of the throat, that's when you're going to start your inhalation. And I want you to be ready to allow your head to glide posterior on your neck, or I want you to allow your whole neck to be drawn backwards, helping to bring your head into a good alignment with the rest of your body. So let me just turn this off. There we go. So let's try that. What we're all going to do is we're all going to take a nice big breath in. Now empty all the way to the bottom, and when you get to the bottom, you're going to swallow, and when that wave gets to the back of your throat, you're going to inhale and let it move your head and neck backwards. Now from here, empty the front of the body from the top of the head down behind the eyeballs, behind the nose, behind the throat, under the chin, front of the throat. And even though we're only moving the neck, keep emptying all the way through the torso, thorax, lumbar, sacrum, pelvis, and then inhale. Let that inhalation drive you into deeper flexion, and as you let that pressure out, let that exiting pressure draw your head back up on top of your shoulders. Now you're going to empty down the back of your body and let your head go with it. Don't push your neck extension. Go as far as the breath will take you comfortably and safely. Don't push. If you're feeling pinching, don't go that far. Go to the place where you know the pinching might start and take the time to empty that place. Like if I'm going into flexion and I feel a place where it's starting to pinch, I am not going to let my head drop further through that pinch. I am going to stay right there, and I am going to focus on emptying that spot, but also emptying all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis. But I'm not going to push through it. If I know there's a pinch there, I'm going to stay right there as I empty all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis, and then I'm going to fill up my back. That's going to not just push my head forward, it's going to lift my head up, separating my vertebra, separating my skull from my vertebra, giving me loft along the whole spine as it goes forward, filling up the back to go forward. Then as that empties out, it's going to pull my head back up to neutral. Then I'll start to empty down the back of the head, the back of the neck, the back of the body, or the spine, all the way to the pelvic floor, all the way into the feet if you wish. But if at any point along the way, as I'm going into extension, I say, oh my goodness, there's a pinch there, I am not going to try to bring my head back any further at first. I'm going to stay right there, and I'm going to focus on emptying my back all the way down to the bottom of my pelvis. And then I'm going to inhale and let my head go as far back as the breath wants to take me. I don't try to push through pain when I do this practice. I try to use the practice to find the places where there is pain and recognize that where there is pain, there is pressure, fluid pressure. Where there is pain, there's going to be pressure. So empty the pressure and free up your range of motion without trying to blast through it, smush it, force it to do something it doesn't want to do. Let your eyes participate in this motion. Let them lead the motion. Remember, empty under the eyes and let yourself come into flexion. Once you've come back to neutral, empty down the back of the head, but start with the top of the eyes. Actually, I wouldn't start with the top of the eyes. Start at the top of the head, and when it gets to the level of the eyes, make sure you empty the top of the eyes so that if you don't empty the top of the eyes, the eyeballs are not going to be able to lift up and participate in this motion. So make sure you're emptying out. Remember, we saw the picture of the eyeball socket. You're going to empty out the top of the eyeball socket so that your eyes can lift up. It doesn't have pressure that's keeping your eyes from lifting up, okay? So try that. Let's try that little experiment. Pressurize the whole system, and then we're going to empty from the back of the head, the top of the back of the head. And when we get to the level of the eyes, you're just going to feel the pressure sucked right out of the top of your eyeball to bring your eyes into the extension process, and keep going down from there. Empty down the back of the neck, thoracic spine, lumbar spine, sacrum, coccyx, pelvic floor. Back of the pelvic floor will lift, and then inhale up the front. Remember, empty the bottom of the eyeballs when you want to bring your head back upright. and through the bottom of the eyeballs when you want to go into flexion. Notice how when you use the breath to drive the end range of motion, you have all of the muscle strength you need. You have all the power already stored in your inhalation that will bring your head back safely to neutral without any pinching or pulling or strain on your connective tissue. So, is everybody feeling the front and the back? Front and the back, thumbs up. Yes, yes. And now, imagine, so go ahead and just yank your neck around some. Yank it side to side. Notice how much smaller your range of motion is if you're yanking your head around. Notice side bending. Oh, side bending feels so lousy when you yank your head around. At least mine does. I think, why would I even bother doing that except to show other people? Because it's such a bad idea, or it's so relatively uncomfortable. And then do flexion extension. Yank your head around in flexion extension. And just appreciate for a moment how different that motion is from using the hydraulic system. And take your head into any of these end ranges of motion, like this one, for example. And then see, if you want, you can, if you have a top knot, you can even yank your head around and see what is my ability. You don't have to use your hair. See what is my strength through my neck. If I yank it over to the side, how strong is my structure? And then go ahead and use your hydraulic system again to bring your head to the side. Party favor your neck. And feel how solid your head is in that end range of motion when you have a whole channel, a whole tube of increased pressure supporting your structure. Like, oh, I should get a picture of that. You know, they make these tents now that are inflatable because they have inflatable tent poles, right? So you just open up these tent poles with air, and that's the structure of the tent. It's the same concept. Oh, I should go get that picture. Okay, so that's what we're doing for today. We are doing, I'm trying to get an animator on this because I think this will all make so much more sense via Zoom if we can have very simple animations that shows the tube coming up and expanding and pushing things in different directions and sucking it back in. But maybe not as great as actually being around to palpate. But to that end, I think I'm going to start. I'm going to do a little self-promotion here. What we're trying to put together is a course, a weekend course for body workers, yoga teachers, fitness instructors, anybody like that, personal trainers, blah, blah, blah. It's a breath class that's going to bring this breath. Then it's going to be 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next day, with optional forest walk afterwards, forest walk and swim. I'm hoping we'll get the first one of these together sometime in the next month. But we're going to do this class for people that are teaching and doing body work, and it's also going to be largely a motion class. How you can use your breath while you're doing body work to support your joints so that they don't hyperextend all the time, putting wear and tear and inflammation in your joints. So we're going to, and Shemen, most of you know Shemen, I believe. Shemen is going to participate. She's going to do a foam roller section because the foam roller is kind of like those Pilates machines that she has over at her place, where they really give you a very vivid experience of how you can really just use your breath and and intention to direct your body like a kite to a different spot. So so she's going to do that on the foam roller, and we'll also with the foam roller we'll also show how you can use the foam roller for your own especially body workers, for treating your own body, treating any kind of congestion that's stuck in your own body. But there's so many exercises that we can do on the foam roller that not only move the lymph out of places and what else do you need to do? You need to move the lymph out of places, right? So it just how to do self-therapy. Now this course is not restricted to body workers, yoga teachers, and fitness instructors, etc. It's really for anybody who wants to do health cultivation. But I think we're going to try to do it with CME credit or whatever this is called, continuing education credits, whatever that's called. So we're going to try to set that up to do that. So yes, any questions for me?
I had a question.
Well, actually, can I ask you to wait because I'm going to be late for my next appointment. So just let her know that I'm going to be late. I apologize for the interruption, but I realized that we went way over. Actually, I'll just call her in a minute. Let me call you in a minute. In a minute. There we go. After questions. Okay. Questions?
Yeah. You made a comparison to the parachutes and the sails on a sailboat before with the diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing about parachutes and sails is that they can overfill with air. If they don't function properly if they're overfull. And so I was wondering if it's possible, even with like a physically healthy body and if the person's diaphragms are all intact and healthy, is it possible to overexpand them and overbreathe? And is there is that possible? Like,
I think that the only danger, I don't really know about that. I don't really understand. That's a new idea for me. So I'd love to. Welcome. I'd love to find out what that mechanism is by which they get overfilled, so that I'm making an accurate. So that I'm understand, because I'm not exactly sure I understand it completely. So I don't know if I can say exactly, answer that question for sure, but I do think that that I imagine that if a sail or a what was the other thing? A parachute gets over full, that would be similar to a umbrella turning inside out. Right? If it got over full, I imagine that it would involute it. Right? It would turn it inside out. Our diaphragms do not have the capacity to involute in the same way that I know of. I can't think of a way that they would involute, because unless you actually pulled a tendon off of, and maybe that's part of what happens when people pop their cartilage. Do you know what I'm talking about, popping the cartilage? Like sometimes in jiu-jitsu or in wrestling, or it could happen in anything really, but sometimes if people are really loaded and they twist, like with a heavy load, you can pop the cartilage off the front. So that might be something like that, but I don't think that would happen. But I don't think that, so maybe that's a similar thing, but I think that that's from not having a good natural motion through that diaphragm. It's that some part of it would get overwhelmed while another part was stuck. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if that wave is coming around with big force, but there's some place where it's restricted, and so it gets jammed up there, and that part gets overfilled, and and so it pops. But we're not trying, at least in this class, we're not in these classes, we're not trying to push the diaphragm to have, you know, and there are practices, and I've done a number of those practices where you really try to push the size of the container and hold it. I don't like to think of it as a hold anymore. I think that's part of the problem. I don't think of it as a hold. I think of it as a suspension almost. It's not even really a suspension. There's no point at which you want to push the breath, hold it, contain it. You're just allowing the wave of contraction to fully mature through the tissues. I think that the problem, that the place where you might come into a problem like you're talking about is if you're trying to push it, is if you're trying to force that wave from the back to the front. If you're trying to force things to get larger through your muscular effort rather than allowing the tissues to absorb the wave of contraction and participate in it. I think it's and when that happens, when you allow the wave to fully mature through the tissues, the contraction wave on the inhalation, then you are going to be you're going to stop moving air at the end of your inhalation. You're going to stop moving air before the inhale ends. And the same is true with your exhalation. Before you get all the way to the bottom of your pelvis, you're going to stop moving air. But if people try to push instead or hold instead of just allowing that full contraction and that full relaxation to reverberate through the tissues, that's where I think you might get into danger. And people do have bad consequences from doing pranayama, especially forceful pranayama. That's why I don't really teach any other pranayama besides this. I teach this one only at this point in my life because this one is so gentle, and I don't think I'm going to hurt anybody. And I honestly, I don't think people might. I'm not a pranayama expert, although maybe some people might think I might be, but I don't think of myself as an expert of all pranayama or a master of it by any stretch of the imagination. But what I do think is the likelihood of getting really great mastery of pranayama is much increased by learning this as a foundation. When people don't learn this as a foundation, where they get full participation and full relaxation, when they don't do that, then they have pockets of their body that are so stiff, right? And then they're trying to blast through it, puff, 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 hold, contract, press. But if you have pockets where there's too much pressure, you're putting, you know, if you're not draining your organs with your exhalations, if you're not draining them with your inhalation and exhalation, and you leave a bunch of residual pressure in there, and then you take a really big breath, put a lot of pressure in your body again, and then you compress everything down, you know, that might be fine. But you also might put pressure on some organs in ways that you don't want to put pressure. You might want to put pressure in some of your autonomic hubs that is going to cause an imbalance rather than a benefit. So I think that the key is to start with a good foundation for pranayama. A good foundation being breathe with every diaphragm, big and easy and slow. Easy is so important. Soft is so important. Did that answer your question?
No, yeah, it did.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay. All right, super. Well, let's see. This is a Binghamton week. There's no office hours this week, but if you have any questions about what we did today, I'm in office hours. I'm in office hours next week. And if you know anybody who might be interested in learning how to use this and bring it into their body work or their instructor practice stuff, let them know that we're doing this class and it's different than probably most things out there. And it's very interesting, I think. I don't know, I'm kind of obsessed with it. Thank you very much for coming. I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you.